Hello everyone, welcome back to the Math 0332 notes. I'm Mr. Lee. We're picking up in Unit 4, Homework 3, which is probably the easiest in this section, converting between percents and decimals, because those two are actually very heavily related to each other. Percent statements are really just parts out of 100, parts of a whole 100%. What that really means is decimals are parts out of 1. And the only difference between parts out of 100 and parts out of 1 is dividing by 100 takes away 2 zeros or moves your decimal place 2 to the left. So if you're converting from a percent to a decimal, you can kind of think of it as this is 25 over 100, and you're going to get it in decimal form. But really, it just takes the percent itself and moves the decimal place to the left. So when you have 25%, or whole number, which is really 25.0, if you're converting it to a decimal, you'll move the decimal place twice to the left. So 25%, which is really 25 out of 100, is really 1/4, or 0.25, as far as it goes. And this works even for numbers that are bigger than 100. 637 is really 637.0. If you move that decimal twice to the left, you'll get 6.37. So overall, it's not too bad. 8% is 8.0. If you're going to move the decimal place to the left and you cover further than something so there's no number there, you have to put in a 0. So 8%, single-digit percents are generally 0.08. So there's usually a single-digit percent as 0.0 something. And you can even have percentages that are smaller, in which case you have 0.31%, but the strategy is still the same. 1, 2, and you add that extra 0, and suddenly 0.31% is 0.0031 as a decimal. So these are usually pretty easy and people pick them up pretty quickly, but it's really important because all equations that deal with percent, you must deal with the decimal when plugging it in, not the percent itself. Because when you multiply something by 5, it gets bigger. But 5% is not bigger than the original, it's smaller, so you have to turn it into a decimal before you do that. Percent equations can be read in such a way. It has A equals PB, but it's read A is P percent of B, is how this is read. Now, the P, it has to be in decimal, but it's A is P percent of B. So they ask you, what is 5% of 350? They're saying A is equal to 5% of 350. But as a decimal, 5% is 0.05, so it's really 0.05 times 350 is what they're really asking. And there's a few different ways you can do this. You can multiply it old school multiplication style out to the side if you would like. But what I see is that I think this should be 17.5. When you multiply, you can either check in a calculator, you can write it out. Let's see, that's 350 times 0.05. 5 times 0 is 0, 25, carry the 2, 17, and everything else is 0. Now, there are 2 numbers behind the decimal place here, so of your 1750, 2 of them have to be behind the decimal place, so it does confirm 17.5 or 17.50. Now, sometimes questions are, what is 237% of 8? So A equals 237% of 8, the way it's worded, which means A is equal to 2.37 as a decimal times 8. And again, you can use old school multiplication or to get this. 8 times 7 is 56, which is 6, carry the 5. 8 times 3, 24, plus the 5 is 29, so we'll carry the 2. You get 18. There's 2 numbers behind the decimal here, none here, for a total of 2. So you get that A is 18.96. All of the ones in this section are always going to be asking you about A. When you get to homework 5, there will be ones asking about potentially P or B missing. Even homework 4 has a little bit of it when you see it, but we'll address that in another video. But that is really going from percentages to decimals and how to solve problems that require you to do so. Now this also means that going from decimals to percent is equal and opposite. So unless going from percentages to decimals meant the decimal moved 2 places to the left to convert it. From going from decimals to percent, you're going to go 2 decimal places to the right to get the corresponding percentage. So write the following decimals as percentage, 0.27, you just move it 2 to the right. So this is 27, and you toss on the percent. Even if the number is bigger than 1, that means that you're expecting to get a number that is bigger than 100%. Move the decimal 2 places to the right. That's 349%. C, if there's a lot of decimals, you can still end up with a small percent. Move it 2 to the right. You get 0.26%. And D, I'm going to leave for you to do. It's really mostly the same. There aren't any really word problems that require you to go from decimal to percent, but decimals to percent is really a helpful skill because sometimes percentages for people are more concrete than decimals are. 70%, if I told you got 0.7 out of 1 points, that doesn't really mean much, but if I told you got 70% on something, that people usually have an idea and a concept of that. But this is really all that it is when converting between decimals and percents.